My 15-year-old slid a black flash drive across my desk. Silver Sharpie spelled my wife's name, Sarah. "Dad, watch it." No explanation, no tears left. I thought, vacation photos, maybe a school project. Then I saw her hands shaking. I plugged it in. One file, 19 minutes. The thumbnail was a hotel bed I didn't own. I hovered, clicked, and heard my wife laugh in a room I'd never seen. A man answered with a voice I recognized from her office parties. Glasses clinked. Someone said, "Does he still buy the conference excuse?" Someone else said, "He believes what I tell him." My chest went tight. Drywall dust still on my knuckles. Paycheck still paying for that laugh. I paused at 30 seconds. That was enough to know, and not enough to look away. Behind me, my daughter whispered, "Steady now. There's more." I stopped being a husband in that moment. I started being a witness. That was the first crack. I slid the flash drive in and the laptop chimed like it was any other Tuesday. The player opened by itself, one file, 19 minutes, a neat little rectangle that felt heavier than a cinder block. I hit play. Hotel lighting washed the screen in that soft beige glow you only see in rooms meant for strangers. Then I heard it. Sarah's laugh, the one I used to chase across crowded kitchens and summer barbecues. Familiar sound, unfamiliar room. It wasn't our bedspread. It wasn't our world. I didn't breathe for a few beats, letting the audio fill the office like cologne I didn't recognize. There's a version of me that would have shut the laptop and walked away, poured a bourbon, called it a glitch. That version didn't show up. The cursor blinked. Sarah laughed again, closer this time. I leaned in, the way you lean in when a doctor clears his throat before the bad news. The door behind me stayed open. My daughter stayed silent. The video didn't. She stepped into frame like it was a commercial. Hair done, black dress, the kind she saves for pitches and Christmas parties. My wife. The bed behind her had hospital corners and a white duvet polished thin by 1,000 quick stays. Then a man drifted in from the left, tall and sure, city fit, Jason Cole. I knew him from her office parties, the guy who shook my hand too tight and scanned the room while doing it. He poured 2 glasses of red and Sarah lifted hers like the start of a toast. My chest tightened, the way it does when a nail bends and you know the lumber's wrong but you swing again anyway. She laughed. He grinned. It looked practiced. They weren't nervous. That bothered me more than anything. The ease. They clinked glasses, and with that tiny sound I felt 15 years tilt. I should have stopped right there. But then Jason said something I couldn't unhear. "Does he still buy the conference excuse?" he asked, casual, like weather. Sarah didn't miss a beat. "He believes what I tell him." I remember the sting in my palms, drywall grit ground into the lines of my hands from that day's site walk. There's a special kind of pain when the person who knows your schedule best weaponizes it. She set the glass down and added, almost amused, "He still thinks I find him attractive." It landed like a socket wrench dropped from a ladder, blunt, ringing, stupidly loud in my skull. I rewound 10 seconds to make sure I heard it right and watched her mouth form the words again, smooth as a brand pitch. My ring felt tight. My shirt felt cheap. Somewhere in the house the AC kicked on and the vent whispered like gossip. The screen kept moving without me. Jason reached for her. The room shrank. I paused the video mid-motion, and her face froze in a smile that wasn't for me. Silence hit so hard it had a sound. The office went dim without asking. The sun had slipped behind our oak and left stripes on the carpet. I could hear the ice in the kitchen freezer dropping into the tray. Dull, domestic, normal. I stared at the frozen frame, the way you stare at a wall you just found a crack in, trying to remember if it was always there. I closed the laptop halfway, then stopped, hovering. If I shut it, I could still pretend there was a version of our life I didn't betray by knowing too much. If I kept going, there was no way back to maybe. I thought about our first apartment, hand-me-down couch, cheaper beer, love as loud as the radio. I thought about the mortgage payment I made that morning, the one that kept everything in this house looking solid. The cursor pulsed like a heartbeat under a bandage. I lifted the lid again. From the doorway, a small voice steadied itself. "Dad?" Lily said, barely above a whisper, as if loud might break me. There's more you don't know. I turned in my chair and saw a kid who wasn't one anymore. Shoulders squared, fingers tight around her phone, eyes rimmed red but dry now, like she'd already cried the kind of tears that leave salt behind. "How long have you known?" I asked, and the question tasted like failure. 3 months, she said. Maybe longer. She didn't flinch. She stepped into the room that used to be just invoices and job schedules and became a courtroom. She set her phone next to the laptop like Exhibit B, a grid of photos, restaurant light, 2 people leaning in too close, receipts, timestamps. My daughter had built a timeline while I built excuses. I felt something shift inside me, less than rage, more than hurt. It was colder. It had edges. "Tell me everything," I said, and meant it. Lily took a breath, and for the first time, I let her. She told me about the night I worked late, how laughter carried through the vents like perfume, how she followed the scent to a closed hallway door and heard Sarah's voice drop an octave reserved for someone else. She talked about scrolling through social posts that didn't belong to her, tracking check-ins, noticing new dresses that never crossed our closet. She admitted to lying to a hotel maid. I said I was Jason's daughter and he forgot his medication. And her voice didn't waver. It scared me and impressed me in the same breath. I should have scolded her. Instead, I saw a kid who learned adult moves because the adults in charge didn't do theirs. She showed me the hotel number she'd memorized, the angle behind a clock where she'd hidden her phone. My stomach turned and my spine straightened. Somewhere a game was on in the living room, distant crowd noise cheering for nothing I cared about. "Are you mad at me?" she asked. I shook my head. "Not at you." Pain came first, hot, stupid, unoriginal. Right behind it, shame, the quiet kind that sits low and heavy because you missed what your kid didn't. Then the temperature dropped. I've been around long enough to know anger burns fast and leaves a mess. Cold does work. I pictured beams and loads and the way a structure fails from the inside first, long before the wall actually falls. That was us. I thought about jokes Sarah cracked at dinner parties. Mike's a hands guy, not a planning guy, and how I laughed along so the table stayed friendly. I remembered fixing other people's mistakes for a living and walking past my own at home because love makes cowards of practical men. I looked at Lily, jaw set just like mine, and made a promise I could keep. The house hummed, the laptop waited, the ache thinned out into a line I could hold. "We do this smart," I said, hearing my voice harden into something useful. No scenes, no tipping our hand. I opened the laptop and scrubbed the timeline, not to punish myself but to map it. Dates matched late nights, receipts matched perfumes I couldn't name. Every click was a nail through assumption. Lily watched my face like a weather report and I forced it calm. "You're not to confront her," I said. "Not at school, not at home. We act normal." The word tasted ridiculous and necessary. I texted a buddy who sometimes serves papers. I searched my contacts for a lawyer who isn't afraid of glossy offices. I moved a percentage of my next deposit to a separate account and felt disloyal and sane at once. Then I closed the laptop and looked at the doorway we'd both have to walk through like nothing had happened. "Can you do it?" I asked. Lily nodded. "Been doing it for months." The garage door rumbled, familiar as weather, right on schedule. Sarah was home. I wiped my hands on my jeans, stood up, and met the sound halfway. That night was a study in pretending. Sarah floated in, talking about client fire drills and a creative director who doesn't get it. I stirred pasta, nodded in the right places, and let steam fog my glasses so she couldn't read my eyes. She kissed Lily's hair without asking a question and skipped mine without breaking stride. Later, we lay back to back in a bed that had memorized our shapes, the distance between us wider than any room. I counted the ceiling fan blades and listened to her breathing even out like a metronome set to someone else's life. Sleep didn't come. Plans did. Names, steps, documents, timing. I pictured the envelope at her office, the look that follows the first page, the hush that moves through a floor when truth arrives with a date stamp. Around 2 a.m., she rolled toward me, hand searching, then stopping short like muscle memory finally met a wall. I stayed still. Morning would require calm. The last thing I wanted finally found me. Dawn. Morning felt like drywall dust. Fine, everywhere, impossible to shake off. I brewed coffee I didn't taste and scrolled to a number I'd saved back when life was simpler. Jack Brennan. We'd shared bleachers at Little League, traded contractors for his office remodel. Jack, I need a referral. Family law. Someone mean but fair. Silence on his end, the kind that carries a nod. Patricia Vance, he said. She doesn't lose. He texted the contact before I could thank him. I stared at Sarah's empty mug by the sink, the one that says Boss Lady, and thought about the first time I bought it. Christmas aisle, half off, grinning like an idiot. I called Patricia's office. The receptionist spoke in clean, steady sentences, the kind that build a bridge over panic. We can see you this afternoon, she said. I set the appointment and felt a small click inside, like a lock turning. On my way out, I touched the door frame I'd installed myself and promised it a better house to guard. At the bank, the pen on a chain scraped like a guilty conscience. I opened a separate account, clean, quiet, legal, and routed a portion of my direct deposit. Not a war chest, just enough to breathe if smoke filled the room. The manager, a guy with salt at his temples, didn't ask questions he didn't need the answers to. Men our age understand storms without forecasts. Back home, I printed statements, mortgage, utilities, insurance, and slid them into a folder labeled House. Funny how writing it down steadied my hands. I took photos of the truck title, the deed dated before the wedding, the receipts that showed who actually paid for the life we lived. I wasn't hiding money. I was building scaffolding so the truth had something to stand on. Lily texted from school. You good? I typed back, working the plan. She sent a thumbs up. I put the folder in the bottom drawer, under spare measuring tapes. It felt right. My life. Measured. Finally. I called Kyle next. He runs heavy equipment during the week and serves papers on weekends. One of those guys who knows how to talk to anyone without stepping in it. I need a discreet shadow, I said. 2 names. Patterns, not drama. He didn't judge. He set rates and boundaries. No cowboy stuff, he said. Photos, timestamps, that's it. We agreed. He asked for headshots, plates, likely haunts. I sent what I had and for the first time in days, exhaled all the way down. I remembered the first time Kyle pulled me out of a jam, rented crane jammed under a bridge, permits screaming. He didn't flinch then either. Give me a week, he said now. You'll have a clean file. I hung up and looked at my hands. Nicks and scars, new and old. My father used to say, a man's hands tell the truth. Mine had spent years fixing other people's messes, now they were fixing mine. The phone buzzed. Unknown number, Patricia's office confirming. Lily's room turned into a war room that afternoon, minus the shouting. She spread photos and receipts on the floor like puzzle pieces and pointed out what I'd missed. She wears this dress when she's with him, she said softly, almost clinical. She never wears it around us. We mapped dates to meetings, meetings to lies, lies to hotel nights. It felt like building a deck. Measure twice, cut once, no do-overs. I told Lily about the first date Sarah and I ever had. Cheap tacos, sticky table, midnight hopes we said out loud because youth makes liars of calendars. Lily listened, then handed me a highlighter. We can keep the good memories, she said. We don't have to keep the person who broke them. She's 15, but she sounded older than both of us. We tucked the timeline into a folder. I labeled it Truth. When I clicked the lamp off, the room glowed with a late Texas sun that made everything look honest. We were ready for the next move. That evening, Sarah came home selling normal like it was her job. She kissed the air near my cheek, kicked off heels, and complained about traffic. I stirred chili and asked about the Anderson account, a name I only knew because I listen more than I speak. She poured herself sparkling water like champagne and talked about office politics, and I nodded on cue. We've all done this dance in some form, pretending the fridge isn't making that sound, pretending knees don't hurt on stairs, pretend keeps the day moving. I let it. Lily played along too, homework on the counter, smile small but steady. When Sarah said she might be late Thursday, I said, "No problem, I've got dinner." The line slipped out like a test I already knew she'd pass, by failing. She thanked me without looking up. I made a mental note that tasted like metal. Pretending is a bridge, not a destination. After dishes, I wiped the counter until it squeaked. Control where you can. When the house went quiet, the mirror got loud. I stood in the bathroom, toothbrush idle, and cataloged my part in the collapse. Not the cheating. I didn't cause that. But I knew the warning signs the way I know a hairline crack in concrete. I ignored them because work was easier than feelings, and paying bills looked like love. Men my age know that trap. Provide, assume it's enough, skip the talk because your old man never had it with you. I remembered wedding vows spoken under a rented arch and wondered when they turned to background noise. I pictured the houses I've built, square, plumb, true, and realized I'd never checked if ours still was. It's humbling. Admitting your silence helped someone else shout lies. I rinsed, spat, and decided the autopsy would end tonight. Tomorrow had jobs to do. I laid out my work jeans and a collared shirt, the kind that says serious without saying court. I set an early alarm and finally killed the light. Kyle's text came in at 6:42 a.m. Got movement. Attached. A photo of Sarah's Lexus sliding into the Hilton garage, timestamp sharp enough to bite. Another, her and Jason at Giovanni's, the Italian place with the red booths and never enough parking. Third, elevator mirror selfie they didn't know they'd taken. Two people too close to be innocent. I felt that strange calm you get when a storm finally breaks where you can see it. No more guessing. Facts laid themselves out like studs on 16-inch centers. Predictable. Solid. I forwarded the package to a fresh email folder I'd titled Counsel. Then I put my phone down and tightened a loose hinge on the pantry door that had been squeaking for weeks. It shut smooth this time. Small fixes matter when big things don't. Lily padded in, hair a mess, eyes clear. I showed her the photos without commentary. She nodded once. Okay, she said. Now we know. The kettle clicked off like a period at the end of a sentence. Patricia Vance's office felt like a courthouse forgot to be intimidating. Tall windows, legal pads stacked with intention, and a woman who shook my hand like we were beginning, not ending. I laid out the file, USB, photos, receipts, timeline, and spoke in contractor terms because that's how my brain works. Foundations cracked, framing compromised, roofs a lie. Patricia smiled without pity. Good. We don't rebuild that house. We document why it fails. She walked me through Virginia law. Fault matters, evidence matters, calm matters most. You want to win in public but behave in private, she said. No shouting, no texting fury. Let the papers speak. I liked that. Papers, not theatrics. She drafted initial filings while I watched the city through glass and thought about how many buildings hold broken stories. One more thing, she said, sliding a retainer across. This is going to hurt. We can still do it clean. I signed. She tapped the stack. We can win this, she said. For the first time, I believed her. We plan service like you plan a pour. Get the mix right, set the form, hit the window. Patricia suggested serving Sarah at work. Public, professional, undeniable. Process server will be polite, she said, but visible. She'll control the narrative by saying nothing. We set Wednesday noon, when offices are full and excuses are thin. I messaged Kyle to coordinate eyes on without heroics. I rehearsed my part, answer nothing, text one sentence, speak to your lawyer, and mute. It felt cold. It also felt adult. Lily asked if she could skip school that day. I told her no. Your life stays yours, I said. Mine changes. Yours shouldn't. She looked relieved, which told me I'd made the right call. That night, I prepped a box for Sarah's essentials. Keys she'd return, mail she'd forward, decency I'd offer once. I set it by the door. The house was quiet in a way I trusted again. The plan was poured. All that was left was to let it cure. Friday morning over coffee, Sarah announced a weekend conference in Richmond. She didn't blink when she said it, which told me she'd practiced in the mirror. Big clients, she added, stirring sugar into nothing. I wiped a clean counter again and nodded like husbands nod. We'll be fine, I said. Drive safe. Lily stood at the window and watched the Lexus back out, then turned to me with one eyebrow up, our private joke for obvious. I texted Kyle, wheels up. 20 minutes later, he sent a photo of an apartment complex on the west side. Glass balconies, rooftop pool, everything young and temporary. Not Richmond, his caption read. I packed a tool bag, not because I needed it, but but because men like me carry weight when we don't know what else to hold. At noon, Patricia confirmed Wednesday's service. By dinner, Lily and I were rolling meatballs like we used to on Sundays. Normal tasted good in my mouth again. The climax was scheduled. We were right on time. Kyle's email hit mid-morning. Subject line, apartment confirmed. Inside were clean shots of Sarah walking into Jason's building, glass balconies, key fob entry, the kind of place that photographs better than it lives. She wasn't sneaking. She moved like someone with a routine. Denim jacket, weekender bag, the dress Lily and I had already tagged on the timeline. Another photo, Jason leaning over the lobby desk, grinning at the concierge like he owned the hour. I studied the timestamps. Arrive 6:58 p.m., elevator 7:01, lights out 11:12. Precision I'd expect on a job site, not in my marriage. My chest didn't flare. It settled. I forwarded everything to Patricia's secure folder and closed the laptop as if I were putting away a tool after the cut. I've told apprentices this 100 times. Measure, don't guess. Guessing makes costly mistakes. Facts save money and men. I poured coffee I didn't need and stood at the window until the cup went cold. Then I called Patricia and said, "Let's move." Patricia slid a packet across the desk like a dealer who knows the table is tilted your way. Grounds, adultery, evidence, video, photos, receipts, witness notes. Her handwriting was neat, almost architectural, each line a beam that would carry weight. She walked me through service options, contingency plans, and the order of operations the way I walk a crew through a pour. The key, she said, is to let the process do the heavy lifting. You stay calm, the papers talk. I signed where she pointed. She asked if I wanted to include a proposed custody arrangement now or wait. Now, I said. If there's one thing men my age learn, it's that waiting rarely makes hard things easier. When we finished, she tapped the stack. Wednesday at noon, she said. Office service, professional, visible. I nodded. On the way out, I noticed a framed quote on her wall. Take the high road. There's less traffic. I smiled. Noted, I said. Outside, Dallas heat met resolve. I stopped by my parents' place after work, a one-story brick that's seen more Christmases than arguments. My dad was on the porch with the evening paper he doesn't actually read. My mom in the kitchen laying out plates like a habit she loves. They've been married 42 years. They argue about the thermostat and split the last biscuit down the middle. You look thin around the eyes, Dad said, his way of asking what's wrong. I told them I couldn't say much yet, but I might need backup, quiet backup. Dad nodded like he was agreeing to help move a couch. Mom replaced my glass of tea without asking. We talked about the Rangers bullpen and my cousin's new baby, all the small talk that keeps families stitched. When I stood to go, Dad squeezed my shoulder once, hard. Whatever it is, he said, finish it clean. That was his blessing. In the truck, I let the engine idle until the knot in my throat loosened. Dinner without Sarah tasted like before. No performance, no careful pauses. Lily and I boiled spaghetti, burned the first batch of garlic bread, and laughed about it anyway. The house felt bigger with fewer words in it. We set 2 plates and left a third in the cabinet because rituals matter, but you don't have to pretend. Lily asked if I remembered her 5th grade science fair and the baking soda volcano we built crooked. It erupted sideways and soaked the principal's shoes. We laughed until the pot threatened to boil over again. There's a relief to regular problems. Halfway through, Lily's smile faded. Do you think she'll say I betrayed her? She asked. She might, I said. People who get caught usually reach for a story. Lily nodded like an adult and twirled pasta that wouldn't stay on the fork. We cleaned up together, humming the same tune without knowing it. As we turned off the kitchen light, both of us looked at the dark window and saw our reflections steadier than yesterday. Wednesday at noon, Patricia's process server walked into Northline Creative like she belonged there. Kyle watched from the cafe across the street with a paper cup and a clear view of reception. He texted updates I didn't need but couldn't stop reading. In. At desk. Calling Sarah. I pictured the office, glass walls, clean fonts, the smell of good coffee and stress. The server waited with that patient posture only people in uniforms and mothers of toddlers have. Sarah appeared. I could almost see the tilt of her chin, the way she squares her shoulders when she wants to win a room. The envelope changed that room. "Documents served," Kyle texted, followed by a photo of the lobby, co-workers pretending not to stare. I was at a job site, eating a sandwich that suddenly tasted like cardboard. I put it down and watched a cement truck back into place, grateful for a task that only does what physics allow. Patricia called. "It's done," she said. "We proceed." I nodded into the wind. The ripple reached me in minutes. A colleague of Sarah's, someone who's liked every anniversary post we ever made, sent me a neutral text. "Hope you're okay." Another message from a number I didn't recognize asked, "Is this true?" I silenced the phone and focused on work, on men with names on their shirts and deadlines that don't care about feelings. Kyle's last photo showed Sarah holding the envelope with both hands. The way people hold a box they don't trust is empty. In the background, Jason stood just out of reach, face tight, eyes calculating. Offices are small towns. Everybody knows what everybody's buying before they ring it up. I imagined the slack voices after the door closed, the awkward jokes, the quick trips to the restroom to text someone else. I didn't feel triumph, I felt gravity, felt consequences weigh exactly what they should. The concrete set. The day moved. By 3 o'clock, the Texas sun had the site shimmering. My phone buzzed again and again, a hive I refused to kick. By 4, the texts were stacked like lumber. Sarah called, then called again, then switched to paragraphs, rage, apology, confusion, bargaining, all the stages in short form. I typed one line, "Please speak to your lawyer." Then I muted her thread and put the phone face down in my toolbox, under a tape measure and a box of screws. Men my age know the temptation to answer, to explain, to make a smoother exit. That's how we end up doing other people's homework. I chose silence. The crew wrapped early for once, heat warnings making cowboys out of all of us. I stood alone in the quiet site, the best kind of church I know, and let the city hum in the distance. A gust blew sawdust across my boots like snow. It made me think of all the times I swept a floor so a room could begin. We were in that moment now, mess visible, tools ready, decisions made. The phone stayed in the box. The sun slid lower, finally less cruel. On the drive home, Lily texted from the bus. "Mom called me crying, said you're being cruel." I pulled into a grocery lot and parked under the only tree that pretends to give shade. "You don't have to answer," I wrote back. "You're not a referee." She sent. I told her I knew. She hung up. I stared at the message and felt that mix of pride and sadness only parents understand. Watching your kid carry a weight you wanted to spare them. Noticing it fits because you've been handing them small versions for years. Chores, apologies, truths. I picked up milk and bread we didn't need, just to move. At checkout, the cashier asked how my day was in that automatic way. "Productive," I said, and meant it in a way he didn't need to. In the truck, I sat until the AC beat back the heat and my hands quit shaking. Then I drove home the long way, past the fields that used to be nothing and are now full of money. I changed the locks before sunset. The deadbolt turned smoother than the old one, a small mercy on a long day. Patricia had walked me through the legal lane markers: house bought before marriage, documented fault, safety for Lily. This wasn't a stunt, it was a step. At 7, Sarah's Lexus slid into the driveway like it owned the space. She tried the key twice. It failed honestly both times. The pounding on the door started small, then found rhythm. I opened it and stood in the frame I had hung myself, boots planted. "This is my home," she said. "You can't. It's our house until the court says otherwise," I answered, calm as a punch list. "Tonight, it's closed to you. We'll pack your things. You can pick them up." Jason's name almost made her flinch when I said it. Just a breath, but I saw it. The sun had dropped behind the roofline, leaving her face in blue shade. Lily stood behind me, silent and straight, a line I wouldn't cross. She tried charm first, old ground, then tears, then anger, the kind that swings wide and hopes to land somewhere soft. "You're humiliating me," she said. I shook my head. "You did this part yourself." Somewhere in the neighborhood a dog barked at nothing and the cicadas got loud, the soundtrack of Texas summer and all its arguments. Sarah reached for the doorframe like she could grab the last month back. I didn't move. Emma, she said finally, using Lily's full name like it might reset the roles. Lily stepped into view. I'm staying with Dad, she said, clear as a drill. Something in Sarah folded then, shoulders, mouth, the places we carry pride. For a second I saw the woman I married scared instead of sharp. It passed. This isn't over, she said. It is for tonight, I answered and closed the door. The new lock clicked once, louder than it needed to. I leaned my forehead against the wood I'd sanded smooth and let out a breath I'd been holding for years. She came back the next evening softer, makeup washed off, voice pitched to the version of me that used to fix everything. Mike, please, she said at the porch light, fingers white on the strap of a bag she wasn't taking inside. We can talk. Counseling. A reset. I thought about resets I'd done on job sites. Kill the breaker, trace the short, replace the bad run, power back up. This wasn't that. You don't rewire a house that's been lying about its foundation. We're done, I said, and heard how flat it sounded, like a level placed on a board that finally reads true. She searched my face the way a gambler reads a table, looking for one soft spot. I kept my expression calm, not cruel. Men my age learn that mercy sometimes looks like clarity. She whispered, I made a mistake. I shook my head. You made a choice. The porch light buzzed. A moth banged itself tired. We're done, I repeated, and felt the sentence settle into place. I didn't plan for Lily to be there, but life rarely cares about our stage directions. She stepped into the hallway, hair tied up, hoodie sleeves past her hands, and looked older than 15. Mom, she said, and that one word had years in it. Sarah reached for her, the automatic move, but Lily didn't step forward. I'm staying with Dad, she said, not angry, not performative, just decided. I remembered teaching her to ride a bike, how she shook until she didn't, how once her balance found her, it stayed. Sarah's hand fell. He's turning you against me, she tried. Lily blinked once. I saw the video. I made the timeline. There was no drama in her voice, and that made it land harder. In families, loyalties shift slowly, then all at once. Mine had just clicked into place. I put a hand on Lily's shoulder, not to claim her, just to brace both of us. We're okay, I told Sarah. You can be okay too, somewhere else. She backed down the steps with that stiff grace people use when they're trying not to fall apart before they reach the car. The neighborhood watched the way neighborhoods do, behind blinds, through a gap in the fence pickets, with concern they'll discuss at the mailbox. Sarah turned at the driveway and found some last reserve. This isn't over, she said, the words thrown like a rope she hoped would tangle my feet. I remembered all the not overs I've lived through, layoffs that came anyway, knees that still ache in the rain, the call from my dad when his brother didn't wake up. Things end, and swearing they don't can't stop physics. I didn't answer her. Some lines don't deserve a response. She got in the Lexus, shut the door too hard, and idled long enough to make a point that had nowhere to go. When the taillights turned the corner, the street felt wider. Lily let out a breath that sounded like mine. We locked the door. The call from Jason came late, the hour men pick when they want to feel dangerous from the safety of their couches. We need to talk, he said, and even his voice had gym swagger, tight, performative, like a shirt one size too small. You show up at her office, humiliate her, and think I'll let that slide? I put him on speaker and set the phone on the counter, continued rinsing plates. Men my age know bullies drain when they can't draw your eyes. You had your part, I said. This is the consequence. He tried to bait me. Blue-collar digs, comments about my skills, a threat to visit my job sites. I took a picture of the screen, sent it to Patricia. Stop calling me, I said, then hung up. He rang twice more. I let it buzz. Lily came in from the living room and raised an eyebrow. That him? I nodded. Sounds insecure, she said. I smiled despite myself. Loud rarely equals strong. Patricia called within 5 minutes, the kind of responsiveness that makes you feel like the only fire on her desk. Do not meet him, she said, voice crisp. If he shows up anywhere, call me and the police. We'll file for a restraining order. I promised to be smart and then did the thing men sometimes do, We do the smart thing after the thing we've already decided to do. I wanted to look the man in the eyes who thought he'd traded up using my life as runway. Not to fight, not to grind anything out of him, just to confirm what I'd already learned, that real power is quiet. I texted him a place I knew well, Bart's, an old bar near the stadium where the booths sag from stories. Lily saw me grab my keys. "Don't start something," she said. "I won't," I answered. "I'll finish something." The difference isn't for everyone, but men my age know it. I took a deep breath and drove. Bart smelled like wood and spilled seasons. Baseball, football, 1,000 conversations nobody will remember right. Jason was in the back booth, hair perfect, shirt trying too hard. He smirked like he owned the lighting. "You came," he said. "You wanted to talk," I replied, sliding in, leaving a respectful distance like two men who never will be friends. He launched into a script, therapy, working it out, doing the decent thing for Sarah's sake, the kind of speech that sounds noble until you look at who's giving it. I let him finish, then took a slow sip. "You didn't win her," I said, calm enough to hear it land. "You won a liar." He blinked. The line wasn't loud, but it was heavy. "She lied to me because you failed her," he shot back, cheap psychology dressed as insight. I shook my head. "She lied to both of us because lying was easier than changing." The TV over the bar called a strike. He didn't notice. I leaned in just enough for truth to feel close. "You think you're the first promotion she dated?" I asked. He flinched. A small tell, but there. "Ask her friend Jessica about what Sarah calls you when she's honest. Fun project." I had no idea if a Jessica existed. I did know the type of conversation that happens in office circles where image is currency. Doubt is a termite. You don't see it working until the step gives way. He shifted in his seat, arrogance rearranging itself around a new fact. "You're bluffing," he said, but it sounded like a prayer. I shrugged. "Maybe. Ask." I didn't raise my voice. Men who build for a living know that quiet instruction moves more material than a shout. He threw a 10 on the table and stood, knocking his knee on the edge. Small impact, big metaphor. "Stay away from us," he said, less sure now. "Gladly," I answered. "She's your project. Good luck with the maintenance." By the weekend, the edges of their story started fraying. A mutual friend, one of those people who narrates other people's lives, let it slip that Jason was keeping options open. A photo surfaced of him at a coffee shop with someone younger, the kind of picture that looks innocent unless you've lived through the angles. Sarah texted me twice, short and sharp, then nothing for a day. That gap told its own truth. Offices turned colder too. People who clapped for her wins learned eye contact costs when scandals fresh. I didn't celebrate it. There's a difference between consequence and entertainment. Lily asked if I felt bad. "Not for what happened," I said. "For how long it took me to act." Men of my generation carry that one a lot. We fix plumbing fast and feelings slow. Sunday afternoon, I mowed the lawn in straight lines, a small square of order in a week full of drop ceilings. When I finished, the yard looked honest. So did the silence. Her parents called next, Patricia with the soft voice, Richard with the hard edges. They wanted to see me, to understand the situation, which is what families say when their image is on the line. I said yes. They came over with careful faces and left their judgments by the door, which felt like respect. Lily set up the living room like a presentation, TV ready, folders on the coffee table, water glasses filled. I hit play and then paused at 30 seconds. That was enough. Patricia cried the way mothers cry when their memories misbehave. Richard stood, paced to the window, and stared at the street like it could explain anything. We walked them through the timeline, not gleeful, not begrudging, just clear. At the end, Richard's voice found gravel. "I was wrong about you," he said. "I thought you weren't enough for her. Turns out she wasn't enough for what you are." I didn't know what to do with that, so I said thank you. They drove straight to Jason's building. Later, Patricia called from their car, voice steady in a way that sounded like exhaustion wearing armor. "We told her we're done funding the lie," she said. "We told her consequences aren't cruelty, they're math." I pictured Sarah opening that apartment door in one of Jason's shirts, seeing her parents' faces fold from love to ledger. Some collapses are private, others happen with witnesses, and they stick. We're pulling her from the will, Richard added, blunt and surgical. I won't have our name underwriting this. I didn't cheer. I didn't gloat. I sat at the kitchen table and ran my thumb along a groove Lily carved into the wood doing homework years ago, a mistake we kept because it's ours. When I hung up, I texted Patricia Vance 2 words. Understood. Proceed. Then I stood on the back porch while the sky burned itself out and let the quiet tell me what came next. Paperwork, boundaries, sleep. Kyle slid a plain manila envelope across my tailgate like we were trading fishing photos. Inside were shots of Jason at a coffee shop with someone new. Same booth twice in 1 week, same touch on the small of a back that wasn't Sarah's. Another photo at a midtown wine bar, low light, big smile, no caution. Patterns don't lie, they repeat. I studied the timestamps like I study a blueprint before a pour. It wasn't jealousy that stirred, just confirmation. Men like him don't build, they sample. I drove home slow, radio low, and thought about how many of us learn too late that easy is expensive. In the driveway, the porch light clicked on by habit, and I stood under it long enough to feel the moths thump the glass. Inside, I spread the photos on my desk, one neat row after another, and felt the calm that comes when the last missing piece fits. This wasn't about winning anymore. It was about closure that could stand up in daylight. I took one photo, the most ordinary one, Jason and the new woman laughing over coffee, and texted it to Sarah with a line I'd rehearsed on long drives. That's who you chose. No swears, no gloating, no paragraph she could forward to anyone. Just a mirror. She didn't respond. Hours later, a single bubble appeared and vanished like a porch light flicking on and off. Someone home, nobody answering. I set the phone face down and made dinner with Lily. Sheet pan chicken, potatoes, the kind of meal that fills a house with proof you're living. When the phone finally chimed, the message was short. You're cruel. I looked at the word until it lost its shape. Cruel is what we call gravity when we step off a ledge. I deleted the photo from my camera roll and kept it in the file where it belonged. Lily asked what I was staring at. A decision, I said. She nodded like she understood more than I wanted her to. Mediation day smelled like copier toner and old coffee. Patricia walked in with a file that could stop a door and a calm that could stop a fight. Sarah arrived with a young attorney who still had optimism on his shoes. The mediator set the ground rules like a ref who's seen too many games. Speak one at a time, facts beat feelings, end on paper. Patricia laid out the evidence. 19 minutes of video, photos, receipts, timelines, no flourish, just wait. We proposed primary custody for me, supervised visitation for Sarah until therapy stuck, the house staying with the person paying for it since before vows. Sarah's lawyer tried words like equitable and contribution. Patricia answered with numbers and dates and the way Lily's name appears in counseling notes. I didn't celebrate when the mediator nodded along. I just breathed, which felt like luxury. 2 hours later, the summary read like the life I'd been living anyway. I'd keep the house and the routine. Lily would keep her peace. In the hallway outside the conference room, Sarah's composure cracked like a tile you step on wrong. Looks fine until it doesn't. Tears came hard. Words came harder. Vindictive, she hissed, the kind of whisper meant to cut without making a scene. You're punishing me. You wanted to humiliate me. I leaned against the wall I wasn't fixing, hands in my pockets so I wouldn't point or plead. The older I get, the more I know that anger is a performance that drains the actor first. You don't have to like me, she added, voice trembling, but don't take my daughter. The hallway felt too narrow for all the history we were trying to stuff into it. The mediator's door opened and closed. Footsteps passed. Life kept happening in sensible shoes. I thought about Lily waiting at home, math homework spread, dog-eared novel on the counter. I chose sentences I could stand next to a year from now, 10 years from now, in any light. No, I said, steady enough to hear it. Not vindictive, just honest. The words didn't feel clever. They felt like a 2x4 resting level. You spent a year telling a story that made you the hero and me the fool. I won't be either. Lily needs calm, more than she needs a narrative. For a heartbeat, everything went quiet, the kind of quiet you get on a job site when the generator hiccups and you can hear your own breath. Sarah stared at the carpet, the pattern repeating like the choices that got us here. "I'm sorry," she said, but the words slid around the facts like water around stone. I nodded because recognizing an apology is different than accepting it. Patricia appeared down the hall, phone to her ear, and gave me the small nod people give each other when the heavy part's over. I pushed off the wall. "Talk to your lawyer," I added, not unkind, just done. It was the only line left for us. Outside, Summer had the parking garage humming like an engine bay. I stood by the truck and watched heat wobble off concrete in waves. I should have felt victorious, but victory wasn't the shape of it. It was more like a room finally cleared. Echoes, dust, space where furniture used to be. Men my age know that feeling after a move. You sit on the one remaining chair and listen to the house breathe. Patricia caught up, paperwork under her arm, a faint smile that respected the moment without trying to brighten it. "You did fine," she said. "Now it's just process." Process is a comforting word to builders and to anyone who's lived through grief. I drove home without the radio, the kind of quiet that lets the thoughts stack properly. In the kitchen, I poured water, not whiskey. Lily looked up from her homework. "How'd it go?" she asked. "Like it was supposed to," I said. She exhaled and went back to algebra. I envied the clean math. The next weeks folded in on themselves. Word got around Northline faster than the elevator, and Sarah's reputation slipped like a heel on wet marble. Projects she used to lead went to other hands. Invitations thinned. People who once cackled at her jokes stopped finding them funny. That's how offices do justice, quietly, with calendars. Then came the HR meeting you can spot from a parking lot, exit folder, security walking too close to be casual, the polite walk of someone whose access just changed. She moved to an extended stay off the highway, the kind with a kitchenette and a smell that never leaves. Friends picked sides, then picked new topics. I didn't crow. I fixed a leaky faucet, paid bills, did weeknight tacos with Lily. There's a relief in small chores. Sometimes the best revenge is a balanced checkbook and a kid who laughs again. Late one night, I got a text from an old neighbor. Saw Sarah at the mall, looked hollow. I put the phone down and prayed anyway. Patricia, her mother, not my lawyer, called me with a voice I recognized from emergency rooms and midnight returns, compressed panic. "Mike, I know this isn't your job anymore," she said, "but I'm worried about her. She won't take our calls. Richard tried. She shut him out. She lost the job. Jason's gone. I'm afraid she might do something." I let the silence run long enough to tell the truth. I didn't want to go. Boundaries are easy to draw on paper, harder to paint on heartwood. "Please," she added softer. "Just check. For Emma, if not for Sarah." That landed. Lily doesn't need her mother to be perfect. She needs her alive. "Send the address," I said. After we hung up, I sat at the table and stared at the wood grain until it stopped moving. Then I told Lily I'd be out for an hour. "Is it Mom?" she asked, already knowing. "Yeah," I said. She nodded, eyes glassy but strong. "Okay, thanks for going." Extended stay hotels have a specific sadness. Lamps that try too hard, carpet that tells on every shoe. I knocked and used my name. The door opened 3 inches, chain on, then closed, then opened fully. Sarah looked like the storm had come ashore, hair unwashed, sweatshirt aged by nights, eyes swollen to the rim. The room smelled like takeout and stale fear. "I'm fine," she said, the lie old and thin. "Your mom's worried you might make a permanent mistake," I answered, stepping just inside but not past the line where invitation starts. She sat on the bed because there was nowhere else to go. "I lost everything," she said, and for once it wasn't theater. "Job, friends, my parents, my daughter." I nodded. "You lost what you gambled. You still have what you can rebuild." She scoffed, a small, tired sound. "Easy for you." I shook my head. "No, just simple. Shower, eat real food, call your mother, find a therapist, one step at a time, or don't. But that's the road." We didn't solve anything in that room. We made two things clear. She asked for forgiveness like a magic trick that could reset the board. I couldn't give it and stay honest. You didn't make mistakes, I said, not cruel, just clean. You made choices, over and over, because they were easier than truth. She cried the kind of tears that finally mean something, not because they move anyone else, but because the person crying hears them. I put a crisis line on the nightstand anyway. If you find the edge, call, I said. If not them, your mom. If not her, me. Not to fix it. To make sure you're breathing so Lily doesn't carry a lifelong scar you could prevent. She nodded without promising. That's where we left it. Two people in a cheap room, finally telling the truth in short sentences. Outside, the highway hummed like it always does. Steady, indifferent. A reminder that life keeps moving whether we do or not. I drove home slowly and slept. 2 weeks later, I signed the last page in Patricia's office, the kind of signature that feels like setting down a beam you've carried too far. No confetti, no gavel, just a stamp, a handshake, and the odd quiet of a room that no longer needs you. Walking to the truck, the Dallas heat wrapped me, but my chest felt light for the first time in a year. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt finished. There's a difference. Patricia asked how I planned to mark the day. By going home, I said, which sounded small until I realized it was everything. At a red light, I rolled the window down and let the wind slap the paperwork on the passenger seat. I thought of all the men I know who keep driving long after the job's done, because stopping feels suspicious. I turned into my neighborhood, watched the speed bumps rise and fall under the hood, and pulled into the driveway with one plan only: breathe, and let life begin again. That night, Lily boiled spaghetti with the competence she learned from every messy Sunday we ever cooked together. Garlic hit the pan, and the house remembered us. We ate at the table we'd sanded and stained one summer, catching splinters and laughing at crooked brush strokes. Lily told a story about a teacher who still mispronounces her name, and I told one about a foreman who still calls me new guy after 10 years. Something loosened between us, the easy kind of silence that follows good punchlines. When the noodles were gone, she twirled the last of the sauce with her fork the way she did at 9, and for a second I could see all her ages at once. Feels normal, she said, surprised at her own smile. I nodded. Normal isn't flashy, but it's the best miracle I know. I scraped plates, she dried, and the kitchen clicked back into place. When we turned off the light, I realized the house was finally breathing with us. The text came 2 days later from a new number that turned out to be the therapist's office. Sarah has started treatment, the message read, and would like to request a structured, supervised meeting with Lily at our clinic. No pleading, no angles, just a formality that felt, for once, like respect. I stared at the words until they stopped buzzing. People talk about hitting bottom like it's a trampoline. In real life, it's more like wet concrete, slow, messy, but it sets. I forwarded the message to Lily with a simple, "When you're ready, we can discuss." She didn't answer right away, and I didn't push. That night, I stood on the back porch and watched heat lightning test the horizon, all show and no rain. I wondered if this was another performance or the first honest try. Either way, the choice wasn't mine. I finished my water, not whiskey, and went inside. My phone lit up on the counter. "Can we talk?" Lily wrote. Now we had a next step. We sat on the couch with 2 mugs of hot chocolate, because some conversations prefer childhood props. Lily stared into hers like it might offer subtitles. "She's still my mom," she said at last, not defending, not excusing, just stating a fact that refused to shrink. I told her about my own father, how we fought over stupid things and important ones, and how love didn't erase the bad days. It just gave us a reason to keep showing up. "I don't want to reward her," Lily said. "I just don't want to hate her forever." That would have sounded too grown for a teenager if not for the way this year aged her. We pulled out a calendar and circled the clinic's name, not a date. "Control what you can," I said. "Timing is yours." She nodded. "I'll think about it with my therapist." A small corner of the room unclenched. We didn't solve the equation, but we agreed on the variables, and that felt like progress ready to pour. A week later, I drove Lily to her session and waited in the parking lot with dads and moms doing the same quiet work. texting, sipping coffee that had given up, checking the door for their kid's outline. When she came out, her steps were thoughtful, not heavy. "She wants to meet," Lily said, sliding into the passenger seat, "but only if we set rules." That sounded like an adult taking care of the kid inside. Back home, we drafted boundaries on a legal pad: location, duration, topics off limits, a safe word that meant pause. Lily chewed the pen cap, then looked up. "Is forgiveness required?" I shook my head. "Not today, maybe not ever. Forgiveness is a tool, not a duty. Use it when it helps you, not when it helps someone else feel better about what they did." She folded the paper and tucked it into her backpack like homework worth keeping. "Okay," she said. "Let's try." The relief wasn't loud, but it rang clear. We'd move on our terms. The first meeting happened in a room with soft lamps and hard chairs, a box of tissues doing its job. I sat in the lobby with a magazine about boats I'll never buy and listened for footsteps that told a story. After an hour, Lily came out with eyes red but spine straight. "She apologized without arguing," she said, surprise trimming the edges of her voice. "She didn't beg. She listened." Small mercies count. On the ride home, we talked about what apologies do and don't fix, about how trust is a bank account built in deposits, not one grand gesture. Lily decided she'd go again, once a week, with the same rules. That night, she opened the fridge and laughed at how empty it was. "Spaghetti?" she suggested, our shorthand for comfort. We cooked in practiced silence. Mid-meal, she set her fork down. "I don't forgive her," she said, "but I don't feel like burning everything down either." That sounded like healing that might actually hold. When the house steadied, people started asking about me. A guy from my gym, widower, kind eyes, too many stories about doctors, invited me to a community 5K and introduced me to someone named Karen who laughed like she meant it. We met for coffee at a place with wobbly tables and good pie. We talked about grown-up things that don't need performance: busted water heaters, adult children, knees that grind on stairs, the way Saturdays feel lonelier than Mondays if you let them. I didn't overshare. I didn't audition. We lingered anyway. Later, Lily asked, "Was it weird?" I told her it felt like testing a deck after it's cured. One step, listen for creaks, take another. We didn't kiss. I didn't want a new story to cover the last one. I wanted proof I could enjoy a chapter without promising a book. That night, I slept, not because I was in love, but because I wasn't afraid of being alone. Sometimes that's the bigger start. Word came through this grapevine that Sarah found work at a bookstore, the old kind with creaky floors, not the mall kind with fluorescent hum. A friend said she seemed smaller and, for once, kinder. Therapy will do that if you let it. She texted Lily photos of stacks she was reading, novels with quiet heroes, biographies of people who climbed down from their own ladders. Lily showed me a picture of Sarah behind the counter, hair pulled back, smile trying, not selling. "She looks human," Lily said, and didn't mean it as an insult. I told her I was glad. We arranged exchanges with spare words and on-time arrivals. No scenes, no guilt receipts. On Saturdays, I mowed neat lines while Lily rode shotgun on college forums and scholarship searches. Life got smaller in the right places and bigger where it mattered. One evening, I tossed the last moving box from the garage. It didn't feel like erasing the past. It felt like making room for furniture that finally fits. Graduation came with cheap folding chairs and a son determined to baptize every head in the stadium. I saved 2 seats, one for me, one for the space I needed. Sarah sat across the aisle with her parents, everyone cautious but kind, like a truce negotiated by wiser versions of ourselves. When Lily crossed the stage, I clapped the way dads clap, loud, proud, unembarrassed by who sees. Sarah stood too, cheeks wet, not performing this time. After the ceremony, we met on the lawn where bad photos are born. "Congratulations," Sarah said, voice steady. Lily hugged her, then me, then both of us in a way that didn't pretend history away. We took one picture together because the future sometimes needs proof the past can sit still. On the drive home, Lily stared at her tassel swinging from the mirror. "I don't hate her," she said, almost surprised. "I don't either," I answered. Acceptance isn't romance. It's simply setting down what you can't carry and walking forward anyway. Evening settled over the porch like a clean sheet. The cicadas tuned down, The neighborhood lights blinked on, and the house, my house, breathed steady again. I turned the little black flash drive in my fingers one last time. It had the weight of a nail, small by itself, devastating in the wrong place. For months I kept it like a smoke alarm, proof I wasn't crazy. Tonight it felt like a souvenir from a fire I'd already walked out of. I dropped it in the metal can by the grill, heard it tick the side, and let the lid fall. No drum roll. Just done. Inside, Lily laughed at some dumb sitcom joke, and that sound carried farther than any apology. I took the long breath men forget to take, and said the only words I needed to hear again tomorrow. That flash drive didn't just end a marriage, it rebuilt a man. I didn't destroy her life. I rebuilt mine. Some stories don't end with forgiveness. They end with peace.